Knight of the Seven Kingdoms just finished its first season, and it's safe to say that not only is it better than I thought, I'm actively looking forward to the next. Look, I wasn't sure if I wanted to mentally prepare myself for another Game of Thrones show. I had done my homework with House of the Dragon and made sure my flowcharts were in order, but with Season 2's whimper of an ending, I wasn't exactly eager to make that same commitment. Then I started seeing posts that this show was funny. Game of Thrones certainly had funny moments, but I wouldn't call it a comedy. House of the Dragon, well, wasn't. By the time the second episode of Seven Kingdoms came out, there was already a surprisingly unexpected positive sentiment surrounding the show. Do you know how much money I lost on Kalshi? Anyway, after watching the first two episodes, I understood. I went into K-pop Demon Hunters with low expectations, based off of, well, everything about it, and it ended up becoming one of my favorite movies of the last year. The contrarian side of me is forever changed. The biggest positive of this show is something that TV seems to have forgotten recently, especially concerning this franchise as a whole. It's manageable. It's small in scope, plot-wise. With how big and bombastic streaming shows and their finales have gotten, it almost feels like showrunners have to include some giant VFX spectacle or crazy green screen set to justify their budget. You know what's even cooler though? Taking that same budget and concentrating it on a central location that evolves over time, letting the audience build a real sense of familiarity with the world, just as the main character does. Huh. It's funny that the show ended right around the same time the trailer for House of the Dragon Season 3 released, because watching that trailer, I already had that feeling in my stomach. The one where you have a test coming up that you know you didn't study for. Okay, so it looks like he's there, she's in her castle now, and she's talking to him. He's over there now, and they're talking to him, and what are these people's names again? It's just too much. I like Dunk. I like Egg. I like seeing what zany character they may run into next and watching them react together to the world around them. You know what I don't need? A separate 8-minute scene of Sir Stefan Fossaway talking about how he plans to fight for the enemy tomorrow and betray his nephew and Sir Dunk. Or a scene of Lionel talking with his knights about how he plans to join Duncan's side. All of that just happens. The story never stops to explain it all to you. It doesn't jump between 3 different characters on different continents having conversations about what they should do. Because it's all centered around a single tournament, the whole season has a cozy vibe to it, for lack of a better word. It's the Cyberpunk vs. Ubisoft approach to world design. Bigger isn't always better. For Ubisoft, the world is often so big it effectively becomes meaningless as you fast travel and watch your horse follow a road for a few minutes. It all blends together and you never see the same location twice or from a different perspective. In Cyberpunk, you revisit key locations over the course of the story, really highlighting how much your character has changed. It's what the later seasons of Game of Thrones are to Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. Too big, with too many viewpoints spread out over too many characters. So much so that the world itself starts to feel small. Here, I enjoyed the scenes in the Fossaway's tent, or simply returning to Dunk's favorite elm after a long day of wandering the tourney crowds, tired and hungry. The writers understand that when done correctly, people will care about someone simply trying to make the perfect sandwich just as much as some great confrontation or battle. And you know what? I'm not afraid to say it. I'm glad there's no dragons. Sorry, Aryan Targaryen. After Welcome to Derry, Stranger Things, and so many other recent series, the lack of blatant CG creatures on screen is refreshing. When the action hits, it hits. Episode 5 has the best fighting I've seen in a show since, well, maybe Battle of the Bastards, and I'm not alone in that. It has nothing to do with characters clambering on top of dragons on a soundstage, or hundreds of nameless soldiers charging in a field. It focuses on what's already inherently terrifying. Straight up arena combat, anything goes. 1v1 me on Rust, you pussy, no snipers. The whole show has been from Dunk's perspective. Why would anything change now? We'll even give you some of the coolest POV shots you've ever seen to really drive the point home. It's gritty, it's dirty and brutal, and it's awesome. I actually cared about pretty much everyone fighting for Dunk at this point, and surprised myself by how much I didn't want anyone to die. Especially Lionel. That guy's the best. He's funny, like Tyrion. They really do have similar faces though. But this show is funny, far funnier than I was expecting. Not just in the script, but in the performances and editing as well. The opening monologue alone was enough to sell me, something along the lines of Dunk being grateful his maester only beat him when he deserved it.
You never beat me when I didn't deserve it.
Followed by a series of shots of various occurrences. It's quick, and has one-liners throughout that made me laugh out loud. And not in the Marvel sense, for lack of a better term. It doesn't have someone say something completely out of character just because it's funny. Most of the humor is in character interaction, and how different personalities clash. Like how when Lionel stops his entire party of dozens of people in his tent because he has a thought and is immediately annoyed he isn't the center of attention.
I've had a profound thought, if anyone would care to listen.
Or when Dunk tells Egg that people used to call him stupid.
Everyone's always told me I was stupid.
And
I ended up liking every character, villain or not, and I think a lot of it comes down to the casting. By the second episode, it was hard to picture Peter or Dexter as anything but Dunk and Egg. It's funny that having a somewhat slow, yet likable and genuine protagonist that's easy to root for feels new now. There's a sincerity to Dunk's character that pierces through the usual darkness of Game of Thrones and other recent shows. Night of the Seven Kingdoms almost feels like a lighthearted fantasy, at least this first season, which, I mean, it literally is, but it's still weird saying that about something set in Westeros. I don't know, man. It's just kinda nice to root for the guy who's trying to do the right thing for once, rather than Jason Bateman robbing someone to pay back a mob, or a detective investigating a murder, but it turns out they have a shady past. Ooh. I'm used to Game of Thrones' proper language by now, which is where the show impressed me again. I mean, how many times have we seen moments of people talking around some big table about customs or traditions or Westeros war plans? It's just kind of nice to have someone go,
"What the fuck is a trial of 7?
Or when Dunk first meets Lionel, he just straight up asks him, "Why the fuck are you in my tent?" With no embellishment. It may seem small, but it makes the entire show so much more watchable, especially if you've never seen anything else in the franchise. Try going back and watching the last few episodes of the second season of House of the Dragon and tell me you're not bored out of your mind. It's so serious, so dark. Everyone's so moody and important things are happening across the realm. But I just want to see what weird inner town Dunk and Egg end up at. Smaller is better. Look, if I had to pick between the two, I'd pick a focused, small-scale fight with characters I know, rather than a battlefield of hundreds of people with a few familiar faces. That's not to say a story can't ever make that engaging, but it hasn't been for me, personally. Honestly, it's hard for me to really find anything to complain about with this show. And despite what others may say, I think 6 episodes is perfect. It doesn't drag, and every episode ends with you immediately wanting to watch the next one. I really do think if this show were even 8 episodes long, there would be more criticism. Because in those 6 episodes, it manages to set up a cast of characters and world that feel more lived in and authentic than anything in House of the Dragon Season 2 and the later seasons of Game of Thrones. And again, no required reading. No homework. The showrunners and creators achieved what almost every other spin-off tries and fails at. A perfect starting point for anyone who doesn't know the first thing about Game of Thrones, yet will still reward longtime fans with important Easter eggs and context clues. A fun and surprising story with a genuine, hopeful tone. A Night of the Seven Kingdoms is good enough to stand completely on its own, and improves upon the very things that made us all so invested in Westeros to begin with. I hope that other new shows take note that, yes, audiences do indeed want a likable protagonist doing good things to root for. Crazy, I know. I'm sure we'll all enjoy the HBO murder mystery DTF St. Louis that comes out next week. Another dark, gritty show about an unsolved murder case in a small town. Sounds lovely. I needed something to cheer me up.